Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tracked Before. This time, Necessary Evil. DS9, Necessary Evil on It's All Been Tracked Before. Some people would say us having a Facebook page is a necessary evil. I'd say it's just a lot of fun. Follow us on Facebook. It's All Been Tracked Before. Spelled just like it sounds. Follow us out there. Lots of fun stuff about the show. Poking fun at ourselves and at Star Trek. And it's just fun. And get in there. Talk to us. Tell us what you think about the shows we're talking about. About us, maybe? Get off that Reddit. Come over to our Facebook page. Do that. And in the meantime, listen to us. It's not a necessary evil, but this is necessary evil on It's All Been Tracked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tracked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We're here to talk about the DS9 episode, Necessary Evil. First impressions.
It was needed.
Was it? It was necessary?
Yes. Yeah.
Needed?
I thought it was a useful bit of backstory. Or rather, I mean, I don't know. I guess I didn't know where it was going, but I'm glad it went there.
Yeah, I thought it was a good, I have several different notes referring to what it was, but good mystery. And yeah, good point, Keith. Good background to pick up and again, create greater or different bonds between the characters currently. And I thought the mystery was cool. And, I don't know, cool is the right word for mystery, but I thought it was a good one. And the way the crumbs were laid out and everything and developed a little more about Odo and all that stuff. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I did remember this episode. I knew where it was going. I knew who the culprit was. And I think the ending was very satisfying. I do wish they'd lean into the conceit a bit more of the noir spoof. I mean, it was very noir in parts with the rapid patter dialogue, the dark and stormy night. I wish they'd kept that up. But it is... While I don't love the DS9 flashbacks to Tarek Noir, this won't be the only one, and I just don't love them tonally or whatever. It is kind of fun to see Odo first meet Dukat, Kira, and Quark.
Yes.
So it fills in those gaps.
Yeah.
For that part was lackluster, but the mystery is a good mystery, and the conclusion was a really powerful conclusion, in my opinion.
Yeah,
so.
The conclusion I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
I was impressed they left, and I'm getting way ahead, but just very quickly, I was impressed that they left things unsaid. They were said without being said.
Right. Yeah, this is a new kind of Trek.
Yeah.
I guess, one where you don't have to explicitly say everything. And I mean, this is definitely, I think an episode like this totally differs it from The Next Generation, because as much as you have like a Dixon Hill story, which superficially is very similar to this, the ground it covers, I just can't see Next Generation covering a story in this manner.
No, I mean, to me, when I think of Dixon Hill, my favorite thing is the one where he's explaining to his lieutenant that, this is all fake. And the guy's like, I gotta go and tell my family we don't exist, or more or less, or whatever. And creates that. I thought that's my favorite Dixon Hill. So far.
I mean, but I think part of what's telling that, I mean, to have your first officer character, one of the hero characters of the show, basically outed as a murderer. I mean, we knew she did things during the war, but to give her that agency of, I murdered somebody. I was afraid it was going to mess with our friendship, but here it is. I did it. She did something that a lot of us would consider evil, even though the circumstances and the context. And I do think she gets somewhat, what helps the audience accept that deed from her is Odo really is as much about justice as you can get. And I think this episode hammers that home. So the fact that he's willing to walk away and let her get away with it tells us something. And I could see the story being told in Next Gen if it was a guest character that had committed the murder. Right. And Picard or Riker, Data looks the other way. Yeah. But to have it be Kira that committed the murder, I mean, it's just awesome. I've said it over and over again. I so did not appreciate Kira enough the first go through the series. She is probably my favorite character now. I mean, maybe Sisko hasn't really unfolded and flourished as a character. He's always been my favorite. So maybe they'll give each other a run for the money as that happens. But up till now, Kira is number one in my book.
Going back to the Dixon Hill superficiality for a moment, it almost took me out of it for a bit. I mean, it made it seem a little. Well, they have the device of the holodeck usually to they're playing along with something, and to have that scene unfold with Quark and this contact at the beginning, in the cold open, just naturally, it feels like they're doing a bit, but at the same time, it's so. I mean, I found it
Did
amusing.
any part of you think that was a holodeck scene?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess so. At first, it felt like that's what they were going for. I mean, in a way, that's what they were going for, but without giving us enough, it seemed right. It seemed, I guess, it's strained probability to think that they would actually be behaving in this way, as entertaining as it was, and the good cop bad cop scene with Cisco and Odo, I didn't see coming until it was like they're kind of going through. I was like, oh, wait a minute. It was just it didn't seem natural that they would do it. It was fun. Maybe they arranged it ahead of time. Maybe not. Maybe they just kind of worked off each other. But it really played out so heavily like that kind of.
I bought the good cop bad cop because Cisco his command style is hard to pin down, and I bought that as fitting within his command style.
Just to get into the noirish look or whatever, I like that transition as opposed to the gauzy flashback. Because I clearly every time I was like, I know where we are. Every time they did that, and it wasn't jarring or anything. It was like, okay.
Well, the lighting was totally different and everything, so it was immediately apparent.
Yeah, which I think
outfits and such.
One, were in the past, and two, okay, and I think you mentioned this a couple times, Jimmy. Like, this is what Deep Space Nine used to look like under the Cardassians. So
yeah.
I also, speaking of the hollow suite, I thought at the top we were in a hollow suite,
right?
At first, so yeah.
I mean, you could certainly be forgiven for thinking that, because it matches the total abrupt shift matches what Next Gen would do in a holodeck type opening, like a Picard doing Shakespeare type situation.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, I thought Catherine Moffat was very attractive, so I'm like, this has to be a hollow suite. But
there are attractive people that are really alive. I mean, Exhibit A, Zia Dax. So
I'm convinced they're all AI.
So we start out at the top. We've kind of danced around this, but there's Quark doing a really rapid patter exchange with a woman that we have not seen before, named Vatrick Palra, played by Catherine Moffat, who's best known for Spy Hard, Quincy M.E., just 2 episodes of that, and guest spots on Simon & Simon and the Dukes of Hazzard. So mostly just guest spots.
She was like Fantasy Island, Hardy Boys, name your BJ and the Bear, your
Wings,
early 80s show. And then she is the woman,
Melrose Place,
who got Riker into playing the game back in the TV episode, The Game. So
she was?
Yeah.
Funny.
Because I was like, she looks so familiar, and all those 70s and 80s shows made sense, but yeah.
You're right. I did not catch that. Atana Joel in The Game.
I was confident we'd seen her on Trek before, but I couldn't place her either.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. The whole exchange of Quark and her, where they're both playing a game, where they both are not saying things that we need to know to understand the situation, but we're getting that from subtext, even if we don't know exactly what it is. Like I said, I love the rapid patter noir type dialogue, and the fact that she's avoiding Odo immediately casts aspersions on her. And what a great red herring, because I definitely, the first time I saw this, I'm sure I believed she was the murderer for most of it, because it seems obvious. And for her not to be the murderer, her husband was keeping her, living in luxury. You're like, wait a second. Usually they kill the husband for the money. Oh, yeah. Okay.
I think the TNG dance, and now it sounds like we're disparaging TNG, but I think the TNG dance, or the one I most notably am always like, come on, she's the murderer. Oh, here's why she isn't. Yeah, she is, or them. I shouldn't say, it's not always a woman. But,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she offers Quark money and sex. It sounds like she has given him both in the past for dealings, which makes you wonder who she is. I mean, obviously, it seemed like her past dealings with him were on Tarek Nor, not on Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
So, the alternate name for Deep Space Nine back when it was Cardassian. So there's already the history. It's already an intriguing, good, hooky, cold open.
Yeah.
I won't say it hung the moon, but
it did not.
I thought it was pretty darn good.
When our boy Trasgo walks out from behind, I wrote down, "Oh my God, did he hear all of that?"
I just wrote down, "Who's he?"
Right. I was just like, "Oh no, did he hear all that?" As if he was eavesdropping. But the way he presented himself, it sounded like he was there. He was supposed to be there for that. So.
You're referring, of course, to Traska, who is Palra's henchman, for lack of a better term, or lover that she's manipulated into helping her. It's not clear. Played by Robert McKenzie, who only has 12 acting credits. Best known for guest starring roles in this show, Quantum Leap, the 80s version of V, and Hunter. This was his penultimate credit before playing a reporter in Liz, the Elizabeth Taylor story. But very short resume.
Sci-fi credits. Like he was like, I don't need sci-fi.
And then he got Liz, the Liz Taylor story, and he's like, how do you top this? I broke out of sci-fi. I reached the pinnacle. I'm done. Let's retire on top. Now, he was fine, but he was very much a stock bad guy.
Yes, I agree very, very, very much.
So I get Odo recording his log, and first of all, I love that he's doing it, but I also really love the detail they added that Sisko's making me do this. I think this is stupid. I hate this. I'm just doing this because I have to. And then his actual first log was just everything's under control and log. I'm like, is that the person every night that shouts all is well and that's it?
Is that where he goes into talking about all the storage space these humans need?
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, Odo does not like hoarders. Does not like. I guess if you live on a space station but live in a room, you really don't want people hoarding.
Well, he's basically like, my memory is good enough. I'll need to write it down. I'm like, well, you must have the best memory in the universe because the rest of our memories are not that good.
I definitely fall somewhere in between a hoarder and a sentimentalist or whatever.
Yeah. The next thing we get is Quark and Rom breaking in, and I wrote down finally in all caps because this is the version of Rom I know. It's very different than what we've seen so far.
I thought that as I watched it, I was like, Jimmy's been talking about this guy.
So this guy is actually loyal to his brother, would never hurt him, is just trying to win his approval, and seems dumb, but is actually technically very clever, technologically.
I love the way he was like, oh no, I took care of that. Oh no, I did this.
Right.
It's just kind of like in your face, Quark.
But doesn't this seem completely different than the Rom we've gotten to know up until now?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's been a gradual shift toward it. Maybe. Yeah.
I mean, he tried to kill his brother just a few weeks ago. He tried to take his spot, sell his spot on the shuttle and everything.
Oh, that's right.
Maybe.
It was like 6 weeks ago.
I know what you're talking about, but they also made it seem as though it could have been like a Quark excuse of some sort. He could have been playing that up for some other reason, but
this is.
I just appreciate finally getting to Rom because this is the version of Rom we get for the next 6 seasons.
Well, obviously, this is a setup because Quark dies a couple scenes later, and so this is setting up Rom taking over because Quark gets killed and that's it. He's done.
That was the one throwback to the old Rom when Rom thinks Quark is dead and then finds out he's actually going to live and then he screams again. That was the one throwback to old Rom that I guess but
that was funny though. It was funny.
Yeah. He also mentions Nog being clever, which Nog is way smarter than Rom, and we'll see that firsthand. But
on the subject of that, I was thinking at the top that I appreciated seeing a good balanced Quark where they don't have to weaken him so much to make a story work.
Yeah.
With the patter, he was obvious, he seemed obviously competent enough to keep up with what was going on. The subtext, using subtext of his own, she wasn't getting away with anything. It was just a good back and forth. But also, the scene with his brother, their dynamic was there, but it wasn't so heavy one way or the other. It wasn't like him being completely incompetent. It wasn't like him being completely caught off guard. It wasn't like him being completely, shut up, my brother. You can't get anything right thing, But it's like, oh, wow, you did, that kind of thing.
The relationship did seem a lot more complex this episode than previously. Yes. Yeah.
I was trying to find the line. I think I paraphrase it here, but essentially it's Quark saying, "You're not as stupid as I thought." And Rob's
yes,
like, yes, I am.
No, it was Odo. It was during the interrogations and stuff, when he was being somebody, one of the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I am as stupid as you thought. Yeah, love it.
That was good. I mean, I absolutely love Rom. He's a great character. Not as good as Nog, but he's a great character. So I appreciated this. So they find the treasure, which, as is appropriate for a mystery of this nature, is just a list of 8 Majoran names. I kind of thought it was funny they had to go find an imager to take an image because, we carry these imagers in our pockets. So it's weird that in the future, I guess they decided, we don't really have to carry cameras all the time. We can put them away and forget about them, which makes sense because a lot of us don't use the camera function that much.
Well, not only that, but this is one of those retro tech kind of things where you would think I don't know. It's almost like two steps forward. What is it? Three steps forward, two steps back, something like that. We go through these advancements. We go through a scale of things where suddenly this thing is so advanced that this other thing seems unnecessary until we make them obsolete to a point where they become very useful in very specific situations that these other things don't really take care of now because society has moved beyond the need, or they people believe that it's moved on beyond the need for this other thing. Texting might be a good example for a bit. I mean, it's just you get to everything and it's like, wait a minute, I don't really want to talk that much. I don't want to use like a video phone to do something. I want to be able to just write something. So can I go back to just using my, that kind of thing, or fax machines and some other things like that. You can do a lot of other things without having a piece of paper that you're putting through a device like that. But sometimes that's a simpler solution than what you would have to do.
Yeah.
In situations, but that sort of thing.
You guys right. Odo said you're not as stupid as it's even more better. You're not as stupid as you look. I am too.
Yeah.
Amazing.
The shot of Quark being shot because he opened up the thing, Trazco, because Pal Ra set Trazco because she knew Quark would open it, because of course he would. Yeah. Who wouldn't open it? You open the Ark of the Covenant once you get it, right? But I like the hubbub that everybody makes over Quark. For as much as he's a pain and like a lot of times they're trying to throw him in jail, the whole Bashir running in there yelling like, no, get this. Yeah. What was he shot with? Tell me the information. I need to save him. This is consistent. Like, it was very professional, very urgent. They actually were trying to save Quark, which tells you that while Quark causes mischief, most of the people he causes mischief with don't actually shoot him. This is unusual.
Yeah. I don't know why, but for some reason, and I know I joked about, oh, he died or whatever, but I feel like in lots of times, whether it's Trek or any media, when someone gets shot, it's in a confrontational state where it's like, oh, this person gets shot. I was like, they're not going to shoot him. Oh, crap, they shot him. I knew, like I said, I knew he was going to die or whatever, but still, I was still surprised how brazen it was.
I didn't remember every detail of the episode, and I kept thinking that, oh, they're faking how bad it is so that they can get the drop on her or whatever. But no, he really was like dead.
I kept thinking that too.
It was very touch and go. I'd forgotten just how serious it was, and I really appreciate that. They mentioned the rule of acquisition: wives serve, brothers inherit, which is so sexist and also just funny in context, even though, obviously also disgusting in reality.
Just to hit on Rom, and we'll hit on
we just got to the Ram-Odo exchange because I already know those exact lines about the one is stupid. Yeah, it's in my notes at this point.
And then he sings like a canary. Doesn't even take much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Cisco playing Rom, where we talked about the good touch on the good cop, bad cop, but Cisco being like, we're friends. Our sons are friends. You gotta help us out here.
Yeah.
Like I said, I buy that as legitimate Cisco behavior, but it's also really fun in the moment because you know exactly what he's doing. And that's the part where Rom is dumb, because Rom is smart at fixing things, but he's certainly dumb enough to be tricked at something like this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Then we get Odo remembering the chemist shop. This is the first real flashback where we meet Dukat, and Dukat is the one that brought Odo here. Not just because of the neck trick he did that apparently imitates the Cardassian neck, which isn't kind of weird. We never got to see that. I figured they'd show it to us at some point. But this is only 5 years ago. It seems like so much longer.
Yeah. I thought it was more like 10 or 12 or something, but yeah.
Wartime. I mean, really, if you think of like 1946 and then you flash back to 1941, it probably would seem like a totally different world.
Hey, when I think of 1918 right now, that seems like a totally different world.
You mean 2020 or 2018?
2018.
1918 was.
1918 is really different.
The Titanic had gone down.
We were all getting the Spanish flu in 1918 or whatever Trump called it.
I appreciated very much the nuance that Dukat gives Odo, that Odo is an investigator, not a cop, not somebody with power, but somebody that's going to investigate. And I like that they made sure, because Dukat is always duplicitous. They made sure to give a in canon reason why he did what he did, why he brought Odo there, what he was trying to do. And all of that was just very smart and very interesting.
Yep.
Which I give credit to the writer, Peter Allen Fields, who we've discussed before. He most recently wrote The Circle, the middle of the 3-part, and the teleplay for Duet last season.
I wrote down knowing that they're like, oh, Gul Dukat's soft side. And I'm like, no, there's a reason, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's always a reason with Dukat.
Yeah.
There's always like 6 reasons with Dukat.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yes. Consistent character telling. I feel like lesser Trek would not have bothered. We've seen plenty of Next Generation episodes where they don't bother to actually get into the consistency of the character that much. And they kept the layers of Dukat consistent.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and a guy who's just more Machiavellian rather than Mussolinian, whatever. I guess, again, a guy who's like, I'm going to do this kind of on the side and make it look like things are cool instead of just executing people.
That is what's really impressive, too, is he comes across as being a fairly reasonable person. And it's almost like it almost makes him a reasonable person in that way. Somebody you would prefer to deal with rather than, as I think is what Stephen was implying there. Somebody who's the evil prison guard type people that you see usually, and it's just he's just enough above it where it's like the not quite playful banter with Odo. That statement about, do you see the way he talks to me?
Mm-hmm.
You see the way that he's abusing this position that he's in right now, etc.
But that was sending a message too, right?
Hmm?
That was sending a message too. That was kind of supporting what Odo was trying to do by saying, look, I give this guy a leash. You should listen to him. Or also he has the authority because he can do this in front of me. Mm-hmm. You need to obey him and let him do his job.
Yeah, I didn't even consider all the reasons what. There were just little nudgings there into you. Maybe you can trust him, maybe you can't. I'm a little bit outraged, but not quite outraged enough to do this because this is important to me, that kind of thing.
And I guess Odo something too. Like Odo's desire for justice and avoiding random executions is actual motivation for Odo. It's not a brute force thing. It's not a you have to do this or I'm gonna do something to you. It's giving Odo something that he wants and desires to entice him into this job. That's pretty intelligent.
Yeah, I think this did a very good job of demonstrating his his overall character motivation that I don't know if I'd gotten that before. Putting him in a position this extreme to see that that's what he actually cares about doing, and that you see him in other situations like that. That's explains a lot of his behavior and some other you see this reluctant friendship with Quark in various situations, and that even like some of the things from season 1, like that puts another spin on the bit where Odo was accused of murder, and he was actually thinking about what he would have to do if he had to leave and do something else. And even that little conversation with Quark, who was just that far on the fence, where he's like, maybe I would like to go into business with you or something. Mm-hmm. And Quark not quite taking the bait. It was like, remember the thing where they seemed serious for just that moment, and then Quark kind of laughed, like he couldn't quite make himself believe that this was a real offer, even though it probably was. Or maybe he knew it was, and he was just letting him off the hook. It was hard to say. But yeah, that kind of thing.
Quark and Odo were 2 characters that came on this show fully formed, played by expert actors that you can just tell immediately they know what they're doing. Yeah, as much as I don't like the Tarek Noor tone, and that always knocks these episodes down, as the more we talk about it and the characterization, you're already running it up in my estimation. Mm-hmm. I think you're definitely selling me on the parts of this episode that I just kind of ignored a bit.
Yeah, the one other thing about that, the complexity of the relationship is there were a lot of times where it's, again, that we're moving along. It seems like they're getting along great. We go back a couple steps, and a few episodes later, it's like why is he on his case so hard again suddenly? Why isn't he giving him all this? It's because he can't help but stick to the justice focus and something. It doesn't matter how much he seems to have liked somebody in some other situation. If he thinks that they've done something wrong, or if he has reason to suspect, he's going to stick right to what he would believe, was the coldest aspects of the facts, and run with that until he has a reason not to. You talking about this brings up one of my notes from later in this episode, where he says, because Odo is so committed to justice and feels it so deep in his bones, he mentions, this is the second time in the series he mentions that it must be racial memory. Something I know about my people is there for justice. And they so aren't. But I like that is how Odo has explained the motivation to himself. It also tells you something about Odo, because he's not willing to take credit for the good parts of himself. He's looking for exterior justification for why he is the way he is.
even though these are things that set him apart from his species, not confirm him in his species. It's just, that's a little bit of a spoiler, but at the same time, it that humbleness of what it means for who Odo is really impressive, that they had the foresight to write it out that way. Because at this point, they already knew what they were doing with Odo's species. We've already heard about, we got the name drop of the Dominion last episode. We're starting to fold that in. We're going to get to it here real soon, the end of the season. So
or they could be setting us up for, or they could be setting us up for the swerve. Not knowing what we know. I kind of bought it. What he said, actually. I was like, oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And it reinforced something we heard in season 1, which means even before they had this arc really planned out, they were dropping it in there. And that's just, it's great. It's so good. In the flashback, Odo notices the widow hasn't cried. So immediately you're getting his detective skills right out.
Yeah, I think that's when I wrote Odo Monk. That's what I wrote there.
Or Columbo. Columbodo? I can't. There's something.
Yeah, that would have been better. Yeah.
Actually, he did do a Columbo move there at the end of the scene, but that also reminds me that they showed us something that I don't think I knew before either. His ability to, it makes perfect sense for a being that has the ability to imitate things that well. He would have to have some sort of they covered something like that in the X-Files once. We'll come back to this segment. The idea he can actually see and analyze tear ducts or something to that effect, or look at facial features and see something with that amount of detail, which is something that would probably be necessary to convincingly imitate something physically. And usually they explain things like that when you have characters who can shapeshift that well, but it's not something I would have assumed or even thought of until they show that. And so, again, I guess that comes back to something Jimmy said a little while ago, him coming in as a fully formed character. So, several characters were like that because they're being shown that way on the space station, just already there. And they're there to be discovered, I guess. We're kind of riding along with Cisco or maybe some other people in Starfleet, which usually that's where we're placed with, as far as the audience goes, our perspective is along for the ride with them as they find new things. So realistically, he's been there for a while. It's not something that he would bother to explain to a lot of people because the people they were running would probably have already known that. That he could analyze things that well. That's why he's so persistent. That's why he's good at detecting things, etc.
That's why he got to stay. Yeah,
that almost goes into my monk thing. Also, I confuse monks with Psych's title track with Monk. I know Monk had a different opening song
for the Columbodo thing. Just one more thing. He's about to walk out of the room. Love this.
Well, you know what? I'll go ahead and jump to my 100th episode.
Go for it.
Because I don't know if you guys have watched Poker Face, the first season of Poker Face on Peacock, but
I have not.
Very Columbo inspired. Even like the opening font, which I should say is very Columbo, and a lot of what she does. Natasha Lyonne on there. So that's one of my older episodes is Natasha Lyonne as Poker Face in space. But her special gift is she can always tell when someone's lying. So. And then she says a certain word, which I can't say on our podcast, but is it because it's a slur? Exactly.
Were you about to say cisgender? Because that is now considered a bannable offense on Twitter.
I guess I can clean it up. She says DF whenever.
Yeah. I know I'm getting off topic, but I don't know if you saw that today that Elon Musk declared publicly that cis and cisgender are considered swears on Twitter, slurs on Twitter that will get you banned.
I wish I had nothing to do like he does. I mean,
he's cool with all the people that are harassing and sending death threats to, scientists for not wanting to debate anti-vax people. But you say cisgender, you're going to get suspended from Twitter.
And I know that's strong words from me saying I wish I had nothing else to do from someone who's doing a Star Trek Rewatch podcast. But we're not hurting anybody.
Well, I suppose it depends on.
Wish Elon Musk was doing a Star Trek Rewatch podcast instead of what he actually is doing.
Yeah,
you did. You said the name. You get to beep the name at this point. Now we're
as much as I hate him, I'll bite the bullet. Elon Musk, if you want to give up being a racist piece of crap, I will let you come on to this podcast and co-host with us instead. If that will keep you away from your evil ways, I pledge it publicly, and I will back it up. Come on, Elon Musk. Come join us as long as you're willing to give up your evil ways in the real world. You could still be evil on this podcast. I'll take that hit if you give it up, like actually hurting people.
But how will we know if he actually follows through? I mean, he could do it like maybe pretend to do it temporarily just to get the platform and then just.
Oh, because we record so far ahead, if he drops that act in less than 6 months, we'll be able to just get rid of those episodes or edit him out of them. So that really kind of locks him. That's part of the nice thing about having the backlog is he's got to keep up that charade for quite a while if he wants to get away with it.
He might be able to do it. 6
Sure,
months.
but if he's willing to do that commitment, man, he deserves to get away with it then. In the episode. When when Odo first meets Kira, he definitely thinks Kira's the like mistress prime suspect, right? Like,
yeah,
that is how he goes into it. But I think immediately that first conversation, Odo is a very good judge of character. And I think he judges her correctly in that first conversation they have.
Mm-hmm. I will say that right at that point is when I would say the first time I started to understand the point of what they were doing. Or rather, when the widow says that she doesn't know the name of the mistress, but she can point her out for Odo. I was like, okay,
yeah,
it's gonna happen.
You knew it was gonna be Kira,
but beyond that, yeah.
I did enjoy Odo teasing the name out of the comedy of that scene of think, what does it start with? And what's the next letter? And then he like gets Rom to say a name. Great, you got the name. I think. I don't know. I could be wrong. That whole bit is just great.
I wrote Odo.
Makes me want more Odo Rom scenes.
I wrote Odo. Is he a hypnotherapist or a hypno standout? Or both? The way he pulled that off.
He has his own techniques, but yeah, this is probably the first time I wanted more Rom in an episode too, because of that. Like such a not only did this like really establish who Rom is, but it made him so much more interesting and useful and fit in the world so much better to give him this characterization.
Indeed.
But here, turning things back on Odo in the flashback of challenging him, you need to consider why Dukat hired you and what his motivation is really good character motivation for all of the involved. It was good. And the whole choosing sides where like, if I tell you the truth, you're going to have to choose sides. And Odo's like, no, I won't. I'm the side of justice. And then she tells him the truth. And it's like, oh, he does have to choose sides. He's so certain that he can stay on this very strict path with the blinders on. And Kira immediately knocks him off of that. And I think that's part of why he's always been so fascinated with Kira. And that explains part of their connection, is she challenges his worldview in what is to him a novel and interesting way.
Well, he in the present or the future or whatever says something that aligns with his decision. And this is something that I think a lot of people have had to bring up over the last decade or so, especially when it comes to certain types of oppressors and people who are, the whole, I'm dancing around it too much. The idea of neutrality, not really being neutrality when it comes to certain kinds of injustices.
Talk about the media.
Yeah. Well, for example, one of these cartoons I saw recently, the whole, somebody's chasing somebody down with a club and he's saying, help me. And he's like, I can't, I'm apolitical. When you say, oh, I don't follow politics. I don't care about things like that. It's that type of silence helping the people, people who are oppressing rather than the oppressor. Odo made the comment later in the future. It just something that indicated that he was obviously disgusted with the idea of the sympathizers.
Yeah.
When he realized that, he was saying that these people were betraying their own people to do this and that. So what Kira was doing, even for all he knew in that first confession, was that she was involved with the underground and that she was confessing to having sabotaged a machine. Something that would hurt people who were, the oppressors in that case. And he obviously saw enough. He understood that what they're doing isn't right. So that would still be on the side of justice. Yeah,
absolutely. The widow playing dumb to Odo in the present day. Odo definitely this is where I thought Odo was letting slip accidentally, but really playing her that Quark is still alive just to see what she'd do. I think he, in a way, was, but that's part of what led me to think that Quark, they're faking how bad it is with Quark so that he can catch her, which wasn't the case, but I still think part of why Odo said that was to see what she would do. Odo gave a metaphor about Quark living as he's doing his monologuing that seemed very out of character for him because he's very plain spoken and doesn't do metaphor. That's where I really thought Dixon Hill. I didn't write down the exact line, but he makes a very colorful metaphor that was very Odo-esque. Probably the only line in this episode that did not feel like Odo to me. We finally see Odo and Quark meet in the flashback, and Quark lies about Kira as the first thing he does when they meet. But I appreciate that in this instance, Quark has a good reason, and that may explain why Odo gives him more benefit of the doubt than we think Quark deserves too, because if that was his first experience, first impressions really stick.
I like that Quark says, he's like, I'm looking for the proprietor of this establishment. Does he owe you money?
Yeah.
Are you here to arrest him? Well, then you found him.
Yes. Under the Federation, Quark doesn't have to be quite as cagey, but yeah, still a little bit.
Is that where they talk about? Yeah, she was showing me her initiative,
right, qualifications or something. Yeah, initiative and something like that.
Is that?
Yeah.
I mean, the implication.
God, we keep saying. What do you mean implication?
Well, the implication.
I'm not saying she did anything. I just said initiative.
The implication is that Kira slept with Quark, right? That's what Quark's claiming.
Yeah, but
that's why Odo gets. And Odo gets mad because he thinks Quark's just saying things to brag. But really, Quark is supporting Kira by saying that because that's what Kira paid him to say.
Right.
So I like that subversion of expectation where it seems like Quark's being a creep. Odo reacts to that. And then you realize Quark is actually not being a creep. I mean, he's being a creep, but for a good cause.
Well, and I guess, it's even more, there's that, and the idea that we all feel like and think that there's no way that's ever happened anyway. But
right. I was like, really? Maybe did they just not tell us this? This is so gross. If that would explain some of the tension between them. I would hope that it wasn't that. But then, I was kind of relieved that it wasn't.
It feels much more in character that it wasn't.
Right. I mean, I was almost ready to buy it. I was almost convinced. I was like, well.
But it also gives you a window into how desperate Kira was during the rebellion, that she was willing to let people believe that she slept with Quark in order to cover up darker deeds.
Right.
Which you can't imagine Kira in present day willing to let anybody believe that for 3 seconds.
Right.
So that shows you the difference in circumstance.
And,
the Kira in this episode is still strong, is still brave, but she's also scared, and you see that. And she's also desperate, and you see that. And Nana Visitor delivers a fantastic performance.
Yeah, I thought so too. In keeping with my Sunny illusion.
Okay, so like I wasn't sure.
If Charlie was like, I guess Charlie does do it. It's like, we're going to be in the waitress. We've been dating for a while.
Yeah.
No, you haven't. Well,
but in this case, the waitress paid Charlie to say that. Because she's actually dealing meth on the side.
Something like that.
She started drinking again. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, she was with me the whole time.
We get some great insight to Odo's detective skills when he's able to create the entire list and realize that the widow's blackmailing the collaborators. It's not what leads him to the murder, but it is still some good detective work. I did think it's interesting that Odo says when they talk about the widow blackmailing the collaborators that not even a Ferengi would stoop so low.
Right.
Because you get the impression a lot of times that he has a very dim view on Ferengi. And I know by him saying that, it actually is showing a dim view on Ferengi. But on the other hand, I think Ferengi would stoop that low. Maybe that's just his friendship with Quark, that Quark wouldn't stoop that low.
Yeah.
Could be that, or maybe it's just hyperbole.
Yeah, could be, for sure.
That's good.
Around the scene, you notice that Trazko is still on the station. He did not escape as they assumed he did once everything went down, which that's a little dangerous because, then that means they are monitoring and they will take other action. Again, I thought they were luring him into a false sense of complacency so they could catch him going to kill Quark, but it ended up only being coincidence that Rom walks in and they catch him.
Yep.
Oh wait, going back to that Odo line about the not even Ferengi, I think my understanding was that he was saying that the collaborators were the ones that were lower than what Ferengi would do. Blackmailing a collaborator, a Ferengi would do.
You're right. Absolutely. I apologize. Yeah, he's basically saying not even Ferengi would be collaborators.
Yes. Selling
but
out
I think many of the ones
we've
met would be.
Could be.
That comes from not writing enough detail in my notes. Thank you for the correction.
Yay.
Odo says Kira doesn't lie well when she admits that she's in the underground and that she sabotaged things in that scene. But she does lie well, we find out years later. So often you don't get that payoff, and I guess because we're doing flashbacks, you can do the payoff within the same episode, but the fact that she lied to him for 5 years, and she was a good liar, she chose what to be a bad liar about to trick him. That's got to make him reevaluate everything he thinks about her, right? Even though it doesn't seem like he does.
Right.
I think he's smitten with her, and I think this is the first big sign that he's smitten with her.
I have a couple thoughts about that. I don't know if... Well, first, I mean, sometimes lying by omission is probably a lot easier than having to actively lie over and over again. It's more like there hadn't been a reason to confess after getting away with that one time.
True.
Or
although she admits she thought about confessing a number of times.
Right. But not so. I mean, yeah, again, she would have to create most likely she would have had to have created the opportunity. We haven't seen on screen. I mean, maybe there were some other mentions here and there. You could look at it in the sense that she was purposefully lying badly later. I mean, that is a possibility. Or it could just be that she wasn't motivated enough to lie better, which is what I usually think of. If you're in a life or death situation like that, and not even just her life, but this, the network of everything that could, possibly go wrong, I think she'd probably be willing to put whatever effort or be able to be mindful about how do I make this lie work or whatever. You get the kind of adrenaline rush, for lack of a better word. Right? Yeah. But for the other things, I mean, most of the things she probably would lie about after that were things, for vanity's sake so that's it.
We get the Rom scream, which is wonderful. It will not be the last time we hear Rom scream. Max Bodencheck. What great characterization. We get the little bit of Quark smiling when Rom screams about Quark living, which I think is a really fun telling moment. The Widow still denies she did bad things, even though she's basically caught red-handed. Mm-hmm. She really commits to those lies. She's like Donald Trump. She's just going to lie until she makes her own reality because she's that unwilling to admit truth, even when caught. And then, of course, she makes a whole thing about how they don't treat Vedic Wynn's relatives the same way with as much, or Vedic Barial's relatives. His son does some tax evasion and does some cocaine, and he hasn't been charged as strongly by Odo, and it's a whole thing. Kira's look when Odo says that he knows the widow didn't kill her husband. I mean, if you didn't know that Kira did it, which, like I said, I mentioned, I knew from the beginning. Right. It was that moment, right, when you figured it out, when Kira gives him that look. Mm-hmm. You know that she did it, and you know that she knows, and that he knows, and you know that he knows that she knows that he knows. It all comes together so beautifully. Mm-hmm. And then admitting that the colleague did the sabotage, Kira did the murder, even if it was an accidental murder, as she was looking for the list and everything, it's still... And that's when you get the explanation about Ducat creating the distance, all that stuff. But what we get at the very end, the last note, is Kira admits that what Odo thinks about her matters a lot. I think it's a testament, first of all, to how dedicated he is to justice and what's fair. And she realizes that about him. And so that would obviously make his opinion mean more than most people's opinion. I think it's also a depth of their friendship. I think it also means that while he's smitten with her, whether she is or not, she cares very deeply about him. I think there's a lot in that I care about what you think, and him letting her off the hook. That him letting her off the hook is not something I think you'd do for even a good friend. I think it's got to be like a really, really like best friend or somebody you're in love with to let them off the hook, in my opinion. And we know Kira's not his best friend because that's Quark. So,
but yeah, I think it's, it has that element of, it's that thing when it's significant. Use the second one. Well, with a significant other, they say, oh man, a terrible thing that they did, and there's different levels of that. And then it's like, okay, how do you react to that? And there's, this person, I want this person in my life, and they're going to be in my life. And not necessarily that Kira is a significant other or whatever, but I guess even a good friend or whatever, it's like, okay, well, where do I go from here? And actually, I was having a conversation with someone the other day, but like, well, the way you hesitated to answer, I'm like, no, I just took time to answer your question. You asked me a question that required thought,
Mhm.
So if I answered it right away, then I don't give a crap about the question.
Yeah.
I took the time to think about an answer. And so I think that's where Odo is. He's like, I need a little more time to process this because,
Yeah.
and because Kira's way ahead of him. She already knew all this, although she doesn't now, she's got to play the game of, I don't know how he's going to react. And that's what happens in life. So yeah, I thought the fact that he ends up kind of leaving her hanging and another reason that seems so effective, but it's also like he's still trying to figure it out, and now she's got to live with. I don't know where he's going to land on this. And
But he also made the comment like it doesn't have to change things between us.
right?
So that to me is, even if he hasn't settled all his feelings about it yet, he is letting her off a hook in a way to say like, look, we're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that part is so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had a few other notes. Fashion. I like Kira's flashback wig. I don't know. That's because Nana Visitor always has the shortcut, which I love too. But I liked her flashback wig.
I like when she's got the longer hair. I'm with you there.
Odo hasn't aged a day.
Well, he wouldn't, would he?
Right, exactly.
He could be 3,000 years old. He could still form the same look.
Yeah. I am happy to know. I don't know. Happy may not be the right word. Tickled. Maybe that's worse. That even in the 24th century, suffocating someone with a pillow is still in fashion. That's still a go-to.
I thought that was you were transitioning to a fashion segment.
Well, no.
Still in fashion. Yeah.
So I enjoyed that. I love, like you already referenced Rom screaming. That was great. Odo's man cave, which we've seen before, his security area. But the way they shot it this time, him walking in there, I'm like, he just sits in there and watches sports on 8 different stations all the time.
And he works from home because that's his quarters and his office.
Yeah, exactly.
His bucket's there.
My other alternate episode was I want to see the prequel, The Adventures of Kira, because what else was she up to? Because I was like, okay.
That was the worst of it.
Not the level, yeah.
I mean, if you want to find out, there are some novels of her during the occupation. Yeah. Her and Wynn, if you want to know what Wynn was up to during the occupation, there's some novels on that too.
There you go. I was going to say, that'd be a great prequel series while we're doing series. And then you guys can think about who would play Nana Visitor now. Who would play Kira now. In my mind, it's got to be someone that looks like Nana Visitor.
Right.
I was going to say there's a 3-part book series called Rebel, Deep Space Nine Rebels.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And they do some flashback with Kai Wynn and Kira and stuff.
That makes total sense. All right. Well, so the source material is already there. But while we're on that, my last note, and they mention, so Odo gets Rom to give up the name Chisaro. And then Chisaro ends up dead. So did Trads go kill him?
Either him or somebody else that Paul Russ said.
Because then later when Kira ended up being the killer, I was like, wait a minute. Did she kill Chisaro? But no, it was.
Yeah, my guess is that they're being blackmailed, and if they won't pay up, then she'll hurt them. And she may just kill one to send a message to the rest of them like, hey, pay up or you're dead too.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Did she?
I mean, she was evil. We know that.
Kira just knew Chisaro was on the list, but she didn't have, that makes sense.
Kira wanted to, there'd be no reason. I mean, actually there would be a reason because he's a collaborator and she hates collaborators, but I think this version of Kira at this time would see him arrested and tried rather than just kill him.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that makes sense that she's
already grown.
Yep.
In the last couple of years.
Yep.
Besides the writer being the one that did the teleplay of Duet, this is the same director as Duet as well.
Oh, wow.
James L. Conway. I don't think this is Duet level good, but I do see why they would bring back the same writer director, because there are some through lines of, if we're going to talk about the occupation, they obviously did a really good job telling a story that harkened back to that time. Let's get the same team in there.
Yeah. Good call.
I mean, my alternate episode is just go full noir. Like I said, I liked the style.
Like holodeck.
And I guess realistically, it would not make sense to go full noir, but they did it enough. I think people would forgive them if they just made the stylistic choice to do it. And it saddens me a bit they didn't go for it. There are other DS9 episodes later where that go for a full style of something. And so that made me a little sad that they kind of held back here. But maybe the fact that they did this but held back is why later they go for it. I don't know. Yeah. Get to the rankings. Who was your shady character this week?
The Widow.
Yeah,
Obviously.
not innocent, but yeah, the Widow. I enjoyed her shadiness very, very much.
Yeah, across the board, Palra, for sure. Who was your annoyance?
You alluded to this earlier, Jimmy, but Trasco was such a cardboard criminal assassin. Yeah, they're bleh. Other than his use of the pillow, I appreciated, but everything else didn't care for. So he annoyed me.
That was my answer as well, for basically the same reason. All the other characters are so well developed that you can't pin any of them as annoyance. Even Rom with his screams. I mean, I'm sorry. It was just, I love Rom so much when you develop him like this. I can't say he's annoying. It has to be Trasco for me.
Same.
We are really in agreement on things today with the rankings. Here you have the drink with. Let's see if that one can also be unanimous.
Widow. No, wait. Nah, probably.
Yeah, I was saying, as much as I talk about the Widow, that makes sense, but I'm going with Odo.
Yeah.
Odo.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he doesn't have to be the glass this time. Odo. Yeah.
You're both going with Odo?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Kira because, first of all, Odo doesn't drink, as we learned, at all. Not just alcohol.
Oh,
just
that's
doesn't
right.
drink
That's
liquid.
More for me.
And Kira's had a really bad day of her best friend finding out some bad stuff about her. So she's going to need some drinks and some commiseration. So I will go hang out with Kira.
That makes me think of the joke. Yeah, we'll take 2. Do you want anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Ranking this episode, you guys seem to like it quite a bit. So did I, especially more so after talking about it. So let's start near the top. Let's go up against The Siege, which was the third part of the 3-parter. Better or worse?
Oh, Siege.
Third part of the 3-parter that opened the season.
Where do we have that? Number 2? Is that number 2?
We have that number 2, yes. So Starfleet's like crawling around the tunnels. The Bajorans have the station. There's a bunch of shenanigans going on.
I like this one more. I don't know.
I'd be willing to go above, honestly.
Yeah.
As much as I like the continuity of the trilogy and everything, this was probably better than that individual part.
Yeah, I would have gone below, but I wouldn't be mad if it went above.
Below that's Cardassians with the Cardassian kid.
Oh yeah. It's well, it's not talking that far. I mean,
Yeah.
that was a decent, okay episode.
That was a good episode, but you'd put this above that?
Yeah.
Okay. Keith, above The Siege is The Homecoming, which was the season premiere. Very strong episode. Start of the trilogy.
I can remember almost nothing about it at the moment. So I'm still it's just gone. And then trying to look.
I mean, Kira lost her job on the station. We started with that goodbye scene.
I just like this. I don't know. It's this one feels stronger to me. Just I guess maybe the flavor of everything, the development is that I feel like that was still that was just them. It's hard for me to buy those kinds of transitional episodes. We know that they're just trying to get us back to sort of like a starting point where they can move forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to buy a lot of things. I'm just kind of like, okay, let's just get this going again. So I don't know. I feel like this one was above that.
Kira losing her job, I think, was the second part because the Homecoming. This was when she went to rescue Lee Nollis. As I look it up, I'm going to disagree and put it below the Homecoming, which with Stevens going lower puts it at second place.
Yeah, all right.
I think it is about on par with the 3-parter, certainly better than the middle part, but I'm not willing to go all the way and knock it completely above the 3-parter. So the Homecoming will stand above it.
Yeah.
We have now split the 3-parter where there are episodes between each of the parts.
Oh, nice.
So the 3-parter is 1, 3, and 5 in our rankings. We did not keep that together the way we usually keep 2-parters together.
So this is number 2, and then number 4 is Rules of Acquisition.
Number 4 is Cardassians. Rules of Acquisition is number. Rules of Acquisition is number 7 of 8.
Oh wow!
We liked it, but this has been a really strong season thus far.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have to keep it at 7 until at least after the next episode.
I mean, of the 8 episodes,
I think Stephen might have gotten that.
Yeah, no, 7 of 9.
Yes.
Yeah, of the 8 episodes we've done, the weakest of them is still a pretty darn good episode. I don't think we've had a bad one yet this season. So
was Melora
is the bottom at the moment, but I liked that episode quite a bit. It's certainly kicking Next Gen's butt this season of Next Gen Season 7 versus DS9 Season 2. I did not expect that. As much as I love DS9, I assumed the final season of Next Generation would just be awesome, and it hasn't been. It's been fine.
I've seen much
Some good moments.
I've seen much less of this season than I would have thought. As far as Next Generation, I mean, I would swear that I saw like all of DS9 up through like maybe seasons 3 and 4, but I'm remembering a lot less of this too than I would have imagined.
I have seen almost none of Next Gen season 7 before this podcast, but I have seen all of DS9 season 2, and I just did not expect this to be kicking Next Gen's butt so solidly, but it definitely is, in my opinion. Next week, speaking of Next Generation, we go back to Next Generation on Federation planet Atria 4. Whatever. Data encounters the former wife of his creator, Noonien Sung, who claims to be his, and this is IMDb's quotes, mother. Until then, live long.
And prosper.
I appreciate you not going full blast on that. I don't know if it's because of your sore throat or just
It seems that way.
Federation.
Yeah, but I could have. It could have sounded better and still not been as loud. But yeah,
I probably could. Don't have it as clearly in my head as I would have liked to have. I could have listened to it right before and done something. But
it was great. I mean, Rom's was great.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?